Okay, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our quarterly Environmental Sustainability Forum. Today's topic is energy efficiency. My name is Christine, and I'm an environmental planner with the Naugatuck-Valley Council of Governments, or NVCOG. We are a regional planning organization that serves 19 municipalities in West Central Connecticut. So a couple of quick housekeeping items. We will be recording this presentation. Those two owls that you see on the desk here record visual and audio. You are welcome, if you're sitting in the back, if you want to speak, to stand up so that it can sort of register you. Today's lunch has been provided by the Green Deli in Waterbury. It is 100% vegan with mindfulness of our mission to promote environmental sustainability. And all beverages are sort of available back in this area. We have water, coffee, and tea. Please help yourself at any time. So finally, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us both virtually and in person. Energy efficiency is top of mind for everyone this time of year, as our dormant heating systems rattle back to life after a quiet summer. New England's rising energy costs have been making the news lately as the war in Ukraine stretches the supply of natural gas thin. Conserving energy where possible and making the most of our energy is imperative to ensure there's enough to go around this winter. Using energy more efficiently also means fewer greenhouse gases contributing to climate change and reduced air pollution in a state where 1 in every 10 residents has asthma. Today, we will examine energy efficiency from 3 different perspectives: what resources are available to help residents save energy, what municipalities can do to save energy, and what big picture plans the state has in this regard. We're fortunate to be joined by Gannon Long and Tanae Mack from Operation Fuel, Justin Bevis and Devin Williamson from Eversource, and Dr. Becca Treach from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Afterwards, we'll invite a roundtable discussion from everyone who's joined us today. And I might have gotten the part wrong about Devin. Is she here?
I don't see her yet.
Okay, so maybe it's just Justin. So with that, thank you again for coming, and I'll turn it over to our Director of Planning, Josh Thar.
I'll be very quick. Thanks to everyone for coming, and especially thanks to Christine for organizing such a fantastic event and getting everybody here and all the food arranged. So just real quick.
Okay, so I'm going to invite Gannon and Tanae to come on up. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. You can say whatever you prefer.
Everybody can hear us and see us okay? Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Gannon Long. I'm the Public Affairs and Policy Director with Operation Fuel.
And I'm Tanae Mack, the Energy Efficiency Programs Manager with Operation Fuel.
So thanks so much to NVCOG and Christine for inviting us. We're really happy to be here. And hopefully in the new year, looking to more partnerships and more similar events like this. We're based in, Operation Fuel is based in Hartford, but we do serve the entire state. And I'll talk a little bit more about what folks can expect in the upcoming year. We do energy assistance and utility bill assistance, including water, for folks around the state that are at 75% and below of the state median income. So if anybody is looking for resources or assistance, we'll be here, and please reach out to us anytime. So we're here today, and I'll start. I work more on the policy side, so I can talk a little bit about what's going on at the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority or the legislature. But I'll talk a little bit first about our work. So if you're not familiar with Operation Fuel, you can, I think one thing that we do and have focused on in the past years is affordability and research around that. So if you go on our website, operationfuel.org, you'll find studies that we've done, including a recent study on mapping transportation, energy, and housing affordability in Connecticut. And this was completed in 2020 through VEIC. So I just want to let everybody know that we have another updated study coming out shortly. It should actually be out this month or next month, I think. And that's going to include water burden as well as energy, transportation, and housing affordability for around the state. So the data is going to be organized by census tract. And I brought a couple snapshots of that from a few towns in the Naugatuck+Valley COG that we can talk about, but I just want to alert folks that that should be on our website, and it's going to be interactive with map. You can look at a census tract, you can look at it by town. And I think this is really important because when we talk about, our state's climate goals, we know that the building sector is one of the largest carbon emitting sectors. It's kind of up there with transportation, and I'll let the quantitative people who study, analyze these things, get it exactly precise, but buildings is right up there. So if we're going to attack our state's carbon emissions and reach our climate goals in the long term, we know that buildings has to be a big part of that. And we also know that low and moderate income people in Connecticut are more likely to live in older housing, more likely not to have a choice of where they're moving to, more likely to live closer to a Superfund or other, environmental hazardous sites. And so when you're talking about asthma in the state, in certain, it could be one in 10 people statewide, but it's going to be much higher in certain parts of the state. So when we're looking at statewide programs, interventions, how we're investing our federal money, the biggest impact that we're going to make towards affordability, equity, and decarbonization is going to be by addressing those communities and that housing in those places. So I think that's really important for us to point out and look at the detailed map of what exactly are people going through. And I'll look forward to folks, if there's folks here from the towns and in the NVCOG region, I'd love to just connect with you and talk more about what's going on and what that snapshot looks like in your town census tracts as we get that data. So I think when we think about buildings as the sector that we really need to focus on decarbonizing as a way to solve our climate goals, as well as to address equity concerns in our state, which is one of the most has some of the greatest wealth inequality in the country. So that's kind of where we need to focus, and it includes new construction. So you may see legislation around, setting higher standards, more efficient standards, stretch codes, to make sure that we're building as far into the future as we can. Passive house, things like this, so that people are, so that we're not investing for the next 30 years in outdated systems. And that's something that I think we can address through legislation and other means. But it also includes retrofitting our existing housing stock. And folks here probably know better than I do how old a lot of Connecticut's housing stock is. We're kind of an old state. And it's great to preserve historic buildings. But that means we also have a lot of work to do of retrofitting people's existing homes. And I will just say I was at a restaurant tavern that was built in the 1790s recently in the northwest part of the state, has a heat pump in it. So I know this is possible to do, right? And it's about, are we committing the resources? Are we working together to get it done? So I'll just touch on a couple of energy efficiency policy updates that folks may want to follow and connect your residents to. I know other folks will talk about this, but for one, getting a home energy score from Energized CT is really important. And a lot of people don't know what that is. Energized CT is an energy efficiency fund and programs that are funded in part by ratepayers. So if you pay an electric bill, access these programs, you're paying for them, right? But get into Energized CT, you can get an audit done on how efficient your home is, and there's different resources and incentives that it can take you from there. We also, for folks that do that and find that they can't, that they can't get energy efficiency upgrades because there's something in the house preventing that. So it might be that asbestos or mold is in your house. And in that case, they're not going to do all of the weatherization because they're going to seal you in with that poisonous air that you don't want in your house. So that type of remediation has to happen in some cases. And again, in the older housing stock, in places where low and moderate income residents are more likely to live, this is where we need to be focusing. And Tanay can talk a little bit more about that, how Operation Fuel is addressing that work through our programs. But also it involves, getting fossil fuels out of the home. So, for new construction, electric, induction stoves and electrification is easier to do, but we also need to be electrifying our existing housing stock. And more research is coming out about the health hazards of having a gas stove or a gas furnace in your home, burning fuels as that you breathe in your house every day. So that's an area to be focused on as well as heat pumps, which are 3 times the efficiency of what the energy that's put into them. They do heating and cooling, and they also improve the air quality for the person living there. So in addition to for the retrofits, and I know, I think Becca from Deep is going to talk about this later. I'm really proud that Operation Fuel supported legislation that passed in 2021 to provide funding for the state to address these barriers in people's homes. And since then, more opportunity has come down from the federal government and different federal legislation that gives Connecticut the resources to do that. So I would, the program is called REPS, Residential Energy something solutions, but Becca's going to talk more about that. But just to let folks know that this work is ongoing, and it's the legislation passed. Deep has been working hard to stand this program up, and folks like us are still working with them to refer clients and make sure that people can get those retrofits that they need. There's also the federal weatherization assistance program. There's battery storage incentives for residents that are coming down the pike, and that's going to be really important, not just for decarbonization, but also for people that frequently have power outages. Battery storage is a way to keep yourself online when that happens. And of course, I mentioned there's other federal funding opportunities. So I could go on a little bit more, and I could talk about the legislation that we're expecting to see next year, and I'll be happy to do that if folks are curious. But I just want to give Tanae a chance to talk as well, just about Operation Fuel's work and some of our client interactions.
Thank you, Janet. So I wanted to share a few stories for clients that we're helping currently in Operation Fuel. One lady, she is 88 years old, bless her heart, out of Guilford, still working a job. She received Social Security income, and she's still working at Petco to pay her mortgage. Make a long story short, she is over income to get energy assistance. So she's had no heat, no hot water, going to the senior center to take showers. She got in touch with us through a Guilford social worker, and we helping her to get heat and hot water. It was bad. She had went and did her credit card. She took and purchased what she could on her credit cards because she was scared, didn't have no heat, no hot water, afraid that her pipes would freeze. Operation Fuel is reimbursing the woman for spending her credit card, using her credit cards to make sure she had heat and hot water. Really sad that she got turned away for being over income, but that's what it is. Another guy, Peter, out of Westport, he is getting a heat pump and some insulation from us at Operation Fuel. He could not afford his portion of the copay after the utility companies had bid all their incentives. His portion was still about $13,000 out of pocket that he would have needed to put forth, and we covering the whole amount for Peter. And of course, he is beyond ecstatic that we helped him at Operation Fuel. So that's just some of the stuff we do at Operation Fuel, like Janet said, helping with water bill, gas bill, electric. The grant amount is actually going up when we open December 19th. It's going up. So we were helping assist people with 500 before. So all around the board now, it will be 1,000 towards your water, your gas, your oil, whatever it is. What else? Heat pumps. The benefit of having and getting a heat pump, I would say definitely better indoor air quality. It does both the heating and the cooling of your home. You won't have no oil or gas bill moving forward. And definitely good incentives when you purchase it, when you purchase the heat pump. I would definitely say that it makes your home more comfortable. I don't know. to be in. And your bill less expensive.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
When you're talking about a heat pump. Now I have oil,
Mhm.
that's going to be more efficient than my oil burner.
I'm gonna say, yes, sir. It is way more efficient than your oil burner.
So what would be the process of transferring from oil heat to a heat pump? And then what do you do with your radiators? Are you talking about forced air?
There's different kinds of heat pumps. So I would say it depends on what the conditions of your house is. I think the first step you would want to do is get an energy audit and just understand how sealed or unsealed your home is. They may want to do things with insulation to keep everything inside the building envelope. So whatever upgrades they would want to make. And at that point, you can either do replacement or you can do displacement with the oil furnace. So some people keep their oil furnace in place so that if something goes wrong, they can refer back to it. Other people replace the whole system and then use the heat pump. You can do it in different ways. There's ductless, there's ground source, there's air. So to be honest, I'm not a technical expert on heat pumps, but there are different kinds and the technology is evolving really fast. So if you saw it 5 years ago and it didn't make sense, it might be worth exploring to see how that would fit. But depending on the insulation of your building, and I think the other part that kind of just again, I'm just a layperson, so the technical piece is not my expertise, but the concept of 3 times the efficiency. So the energy that you put into a heat pump, the heat pump produces 3 times that much, as opposed to a combustible fuel, which ideally might be close to 97% or something, but it's not over 100%. So that's part of it. And then in terms of expense, you have your oil bill goes up a huge amount in the winter, right?
Especially now.
Lower in the summer. The heat pump would kind of be more moderated, I think, throughout because it's doing all of the heating and cooling for the building.
But with a heat pump, aren't you going to use more electricity?
You would use more electricity. So that's why it's really important to make sure that your home is all insulated. So whatever but that's the trade-off. And I think actually on Eversource, Energized CT, or maybe even Eversource has a calculator. So you could put in, if you go to that website, you can put in, here's the size of my home. I think it's really well insulated or it's not, or you would find that out from the audit. And then you could put in, how you can see actually how a heat pump would compare to oil or gas or electric resistance heat in the same type of building.
No, but what I'm driving at here is, the big thing today is green. Everything is green. It's getting confusing more and more as we get into it. The more we depend on electricity, that has to be generated somewhere. How do you generate more electricity? Coal, oil?
Hopefully not, right? There's
If I
limited
could-
amounts.
Yeah, if I could jump in for that. So, when you're burning, oil to get heat,
Right.
100% of that is fossil fuels, right? When you're tapping into the electrical grid to get heat, our electrical grid is made up of several different things, right? It's about 62% natural gas, which is a fossil fuel. But we also have about 30-ish% nuclear, which is not a fossil fuel. We also have some solar and wind coming in, right? And as that electrical grid continues to get cleaner, the energy in your house continues to get cleaner. So electrification allows us to grow with the grid, whereas if you stay oil, it's just always 100% fossil fuel.
Okay.
Is this the same process that is used down the south? Because we have property down south and we heat our homes with heat pumps. Is this the same system?
Is the same system, but like Gannon said, it's different types. So it's ones for down south that you're supposed to use for down south, but then there's also different ones that you're supposed to use up here, and you have to make sure that your home is tight.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
weatherized, for it to work correctly here.
I know our electrical bills down there are much cheaper than we have here. And we have a 1,800 square foot area that we are heating and air conditioning.
Mhm.
And it's amazing compared to heating our home here, which is 1,300 square feet. And we're paying over $400 a month just for heat without the electricity. So I just wondered if, and our furnace is fairly new. We just bought it, I'm gonna say about 3 or 4 years ago, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And to convert that now, at this point, I think would be prohibitive. You know, as
Yeah.
far as the money that we have already put into a new furnace. But I know down south, it's very feasible,
Yeah.
works
Well,
very well.
The
Yeah.
rates are much cheaper down
Yeah.
there.
The
than
rates are
here,
different.
here, as far as
Yeah.
electricity is concerned.
Yeah,
And then up here, you would just be paying your, if you did, you would just be paying your electric. If you did convert to the heat pump, not oil and your electric like you are
Mhm.
doing now.
Yeah, no, I can see that,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's, in other words, it's, instead of two sources, you have one source.
But I could really see that for new home development.
yeah,
I think that's an excellent
Yeah.
way to not only save money for personal reasons, but for environmental reasons
Mhm.
also.
yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I'd like to invite others with questions. I'm gonna pause the share, so if anyone is online. Or I tried to pause sharing my screen, did that not work? Up there, nope, okay, so then I will just. Stop sharing my screen, just so we can see some faces. There we go. Anyone online have questions for our presenters? Or of course in the room as well? Sure.
Well, are there any incentives for nonprofit organizations? I mean, that's what I'm representing, yeah, so how do we,
Yeah, that's a great question.
how do we?
And I
access
was actually just thinking about it when I was
So,
talking to you a minute ago.
yes, ma'am, absolutely. Currently, I'm dealing with, I'm doing a home now and I'm dealing with a contractor, home comfort practice. And we getting together all like we're going, the client filled out a HES-IE application.
You do what?
The client filled out a HES-IE.
Okay, that's something everybody's supposed to do, HES.
Are you talking about?
Home Energy Solutions Income Eligible Application is what the client filled out.
Okay. And what organization is that coming from?
So Home Comfort Practice is the contractor. The organization is us, Operation Fuel. We're
Okay,
helping
so that's
with,
the operation. Fuel.
yes, ma'am. We're helping with Home Comfort Practice. She's going to, Home Comfort Practice will be the one that send the paperwork into the utility company. I think it'll be Eversource, or you
Right.
have one of them, but Eversource. And she'll let us know what exactly they're gonna pay and what the copay will be for the customer or us.
So, but you're looking for, you're managing a nonprofit, right? So you're looking for how your nonprofit can become.
Right, in
more
other words, the
efficient?
nonprofit has the buildings.
Right,
Owns the building, not individuals.
Right,
So
right.
Is there any, and we already have Xerox from the Eversource, is this beyond that, you know?
So I'm not super familiar with it, but what I would definitely do is look at Energized CT and you can actually ask some folks in the room here of the best way to kind of get that
Okay.
assessment, especially if it's multiple buildings, it might
Right.
be a little bit more involved. I would
Right.
reach out there first.
Okay,
The other thing I was gonna mention to you though, that I didn't list in my list of policies is there's a program in Connecticut called Shared Clean Energy Facilities, and it was ordered by the legislature and then PURA, the regulators are implementing it. So they do a different program review each year. And Becca, I know Deep is involved with this. Becca may also speak to this, but there is set asides in that program. It's basically the people that they
what was the name of the program again?
Shared Clean Energy Facilities.
Okay,
And it's called SCAF. People like to call it SCAF. But this is basically, there's set asides in the legislation to, they're gonna be building different solar or fuel cell, different energy generation sources. And then the subscriptions for that energy is gonna go to set aside populations.
Oh, I
So
see.
40% of they just updated the legislation this past year, so 40% of those subscriptions are gonna go to lower income customers. But there are also set asides for community-based organizations. So
Okay.
this may be something where it might be that you can work with the Energized CT folks to get some building upgrades, maybe LED lighting or, if there's different, sealing the envelope of the building, things like that. But if you can't put, solar on your building itself, you might be able to get access to one of these subscriptions that's gonna affect your electric bill.
Okay, and that goes under Energized Connecticut.
Yeah, and I'll give you my card after.
Okay,
the
thank
post
you.
Right there, so I'll love to follow up with you about that.
Okay, and then just in the interest of time, to make sure we have time for our other wonderful speakers, I want to say thank you so much. Please stick around. We'll have questions for you at the end, I'm sure. Thank you so much. Give him a round of applause. Okay, wonderful. And with that, I'd like to invite Eversource. I'm gonna share my screen again. There you go. You can sit or stand or whatever you prefer.
I'll sit, why not?
Sure.
Oh, this is a great setup, by the way.
I'm gonna have to look back here. Perfect.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Devin Williamson, Marketing Specialist for Community Engagement in the Energy Efficiency section of Eversource. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Justin Beavis, and you can introduce your title.
Yeah, I'm the energy efficiency sales executive for Eversource. So I help manage the energy efficiency programs for commercial, industrial, and municipal customers in the western portion of Connecticut.
Excellent. So with that, we'll get started. So just some brief stats on Eversource. Eversource serves 3 states. We're the largest energy company in New England, and we serve Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. And those are sections of each state. We also serve 4 million customers in electric, natural gas, and water. Nearly just over 8,000 employees across all 3 states, and then 700 million plus annual energy efficiency investment across all 3 states. And we've also received several awards for our energy efficiency services. So just a word about Energized CT. So I'm sure everybody's seen Energized CT marketed somewhere on a bill. When you're driving in a car in their radio, you hear about Energized CT offerings and incentives. So Energized CT is actually a brand that unites Eversource, CNG, SCG, the gas companies, NUI, the Energy Efficiency Board, Connecticut Green Bank, and the state. We've united on a shared mission to provide Connecticut residents and businesses the resources they need to save money and use clean energy. And this initiative empowers our communities to make smart energy choices now and in the future. But what does that mean for you? That means that all of those entities are marketing the Energized CT suite of incentives and programs and offerings under that brand. So sometimes I get requests and they say, hey, we'd love to have someone from Energized CT speak at our event. And then I email them and they see an Eversource email address come through and they say, oh, no, we wanted somebody from Energized CT. And I'm like, well, we're one and the same. There's no people that work at Energized CT, but it's the brand that offers all the products from these entities. And this includes small business, residential programs, commercial and industrial, municipal customer programs. If you are living and working or just working in Connecticut, there's a program for you to save on energy efficiency. All right, so we'll get into our agenda for today. We're going to discuss municipal customer retrofit programs. So that's for our municipal customers specifically. And then we're going to discuss incentives. We're going to run through a case study. And then we're going to also provide additional resources for municipalities. And then we'll take questions. I also brought some materials with me, and I'm going to briefly describe what those materials are, including our Home Energy Solutions brochure in English and Spanish, and it has our 877 WISE use number on it, which is your gateway to all of the programs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin.
Okay, so once again, I'm Justin Davis. So I work for Eversource and the Energized CT programs. I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. So if we have questions, try to save it to the end, just because I've got a ton of slides, there's a ton of programs, and I want to leave a little bit of time at the end. So just first looking at what a municipality can do, and I'm going to focus on commercial, industrial, municipality customers, what they can do versus residential. Things that we are looking to work with the municipalities on is lighting controls, EMS systems. There won't be much process equipment, VFD additions to rooftop units, new rooftop units themselves. There could be refrigeration controls, and even there's incentives for coming off gas delivered fuels at this point too. So this is outside of lighting itself. There's a lot of things that can be done at a municipality. The main things that we're seeing at this point is the electrification of systems. So they talked about heat pumps, and we'll get into that a little bit as well. It can get a little tricky. There's a good amount of work that goes into reviewing what a heat pump would be put into even a commercial site versus a residential site as well. But I'm going to keep going, and I first wanted to look at lighting. So, lighting is, it's continuing to go away at this point for incentives. Right now, they're still good, but LEDs are basically the baseline for what is going to be either retrofitted for an existing building or put in for a new construction. But the way we're, encouraging people to do, and municipalities and commercial customers to really focus on lighting, is to put more controls with that. So it used to be you just put LEDs in and that was great. Now we provide better incentives based on how much controls that you put into the systems now. So you'll see here on the slide, there's 3 levels of incentives that we offer. Basic LED conversion is 25 cents to 25% of the cost of a project. That's just swapping out a fixture to an LED fixture. If you add 2 levels of controls, you can get into the next tier of incentives at 45 cents to 45% of the cost of a project, which are things like high-end trim, occupancy sensors, daylighting controls. And then if you add a network lighting control system, which is kind of like a full brain of the system for demand response, have zone controls, you can get into the highest tier of 65 cents to 65% of the cost of the project. So incentives are really good at this point. I do expect them to eventually go down or go away altogether in probably the near future, because LEDs are the baseline, and once something becomes code, there's no reason for the programs to offer incentives anymore. So outside of just lighting itself, we always, even though gas, we're going towards electrification of the systems, there's still a lot of gas systems out there, and it's going to take a long time to kind of move away from that. So you want to focus on gas measures still if you still have that equipment. So people are still going to install natural gas boilers. They're still going to do EMS upgrades that have natural gas equipment. So we want to optimize the systems now. So there are programs, and you'll see them on the slide here, that are based towards CCF gas savings. Like I said, from boilers all the way to windows, installation, steam trap repairs. And some of these things you can do on an annual basis. Steam trap repairs are a simple measure that I always, tell everybody about. They can be done annually. Steam traps and steam systems continuously leak, so they fix them, and then another year you're going to find another round of problems. So those are programs that we offer that can be done annually. So we want to optimize the existing systems as we have now, as we make our way toward electrification of the system. And we're going to focus on what the incentives are for the rest of the measures outside of lighting, plus there's financing available for our commercial industrial, and then specifically one for municipalities, how they can take advantage of it. That doesn't take advantage of a lot. So outside of lighting, the way we look at our programs and we tier them, we want to benefit customers that do more at the same time. So it's great that, a customer can do one measure, they're going to do lighting, but the way we've tiered our incentives, the more projects and the more end uses that you do at the same time, you can get better incentives. So just like lighting, where it ranges from 25 to 65, if you do multiple measures at the same time, so say you were to do a lighting project, a rooftop replacement, some EMS controls, you can work your way all the way up to 40 cents a kWh saved, up to 40% of the cost of a project, all the way up to 65 cents to 65% of the cost of a project as well. So I have a case study that I'm going to showcase later on with one of the municipalities I worked with, decided to package all their projects together, and they got much more lucrative incentive, but they also got more energy savings now versus what they would have done, in the future. I see there's a question coming up, and we'll get to that in just a second. And so outside of just the normal custom route, there are other pass-for incentives as well that I just wanted to highlight. If you don't go through a custom application, there's also a midstream process, which is basically we offer a discounted rate directly at point of purchase. So buying from a distributor, that's through our programs, or somewhere like Home Depot has, like, you might see like Energized CT placard that shows like that the fixture was reduced already. You're getting the point of sale discount as it is. So you don't have to do any paperwork. It's simple. We've worked with these customers and these organizations to already reduce the costs. Then if you, at one point, if you have a smaller project and you forgot to come to us in the beginning, there are certain measures that are allowed for rebates. So if you have a small lighting project, maybe you're just doing 1 or 2 rooftop units, you can do a rebate afterwards. I would caution that, because a lot of times we do need pre-inspections on equipment to verify existing conditions. But there are some measures that are, smaller that we we're allowing customers to go ahead in the meantime, and then apply for a rebate afterwards. But it's always best to check with us at Energized CT and Eversource before you do any work, just to see what's the best path for you. We'll help you figure out where the best incentive is going to be and where the best energy savings can be. And I also wanted to highlight for municipalities the new construction programs. So we want to be involved as much as we possibly can for all projects, but especially new construction. So we want these buildings, when they're built, to be done right, to be the most energy efficient they can be from the start out. So there's 4 paths within our new construction programs. You'll see them highlighted here, from net zero buildings to just looking at a specific piece of equipment. What I want to focus on today a little bit is really the net zero path. We want our municipalities and the new schools that are being built. So most municipalities are looking at, we've got an expanding population, they need new schools. So we want those new schools to be built at a net zero. So, and what does that mean? It's looking at the energy utilization for the index for the particular building. You try to get as low as possible to make these buildings most efficient. So when they're installed. So these programs provide resources to look at all the systems. We provide cost shares for designers. So we want to be involved as early as possible, as soon as as a concept. Before they have even designed the building, we want to be in there and saying, have our word on what you're going to install, to help bring it down as much as possible and to tell you, here's the incentives that you can get for doing that work. Instead of just a building be designed and then we come in afterwards, there's paths for that, but you're not going to get the best bang for the buck for energy savings plus incentives. And so financing as well, we have financing from residential all the way to small business to municipalities. The one I wanted to talk about today that it's still probably only about 50% of our municipalities take advantage of is 0% on-bill financing. So Eversource offers, through the Energized CT program, 0% up to $5 million to municipalities to utilize on-bill for energy efficiency projects. So it used to be $1 million, and now it's up to $5 million because we realize, project costs continue to grow, and we want to be able to help out do these larger scale projects all at once. So as I mentioned, comprehensive work, instead of doing one single measure, we want all the measures at once to kind of get the work done quicker for these energy savings. So, and it's a rolling fund. So a municipality has $5 million as they go through these projects and resources for us. Once they start to pay it off, that money comes back available to them. So we take that on-bill financing and they can put it right now, it comes on their electric bill. So a lot of times there's no upfront cost for these guys. They do the project and the rest is financed through the Energized CT programs. And so the case that I mentioned, I want to highlight. So one of the municipalities worked with, instead of them just doing lighting at a particular building, we had a contractor work with these guys to look at lighting, transformers, faucet aerators, VFDs on hot water pumps. All those measures were put together. If they had just done those measures each time, coming back to us and say, hey, we're going to do lighting right now, and then we're going to do rooftop units, you'll see the number down at the bottom, individual incentives. They would have got $881,000 for that. By combining the work, they qualified through our comprehensive programs, and they got up to almost $1.4 million. They got an additional $500,000 just by combining the work together, where they would have done it separately. And so the municipality was able to do more work, get those energy savings quicker, and get more money for that work as well. And so there's a bunch of other additional resources available for municipalities. There's benchmarking. We partner with UConn to do benchmarking of facilities. So if you don't know where to start for municipalities and they haven't benchmarked their buildings, that's the first step you really need to do. Understand what your building is using now, so you can start to identify energy efficiency projects at the site. Find the outliers, the buildings that are using the high energy, and maybe you don't know about, that can be fixed quicker. There's also technical assistance studies. A lot of times there's various amount of studies that we do. So if you don't know what to do either outside of benchmarking, there's all sorts of different co-shares that we provide for studies. So there's industrial ones that we offer, 50-50 co-shares. There's municipal offerings that we have through SBA, VA, that a lot of times there's no cost. Most of the time, there's at least a 50-50 cost share for a study. So if you don't know what to do in these municipalities, a lot of times we have an approved engineering firms that we've vetted out to work within our programs that we'll send out, and they'll do the great thing about these engineering firms is they're neutral. They're not trying to sell you a particular product. They're just there to try to find you energy efficiency measures, try to find ways to reduce the cost of these buildings. And they're going to give you their best ideas for those buildings and provide that to us. And we're going to pay, a lot of times we'll pay 50% of that cost. And most times you can earn those back by doing the actual projects themselves. And then there's also retro commissioning. So retro commissioning is a specific study for EMS systems. It's really to optimize and fine tune the existing system to today's usage. So buildings change over the time, how they're used. So gyms can be used as classrooms at this point, as the schools get changed over the years. And it's really the air setup or the rooftop units were not set up for that design. So it's optimizing the existing systems as they are now by adding new control points to those systems. We provide there's basically 3 steps to this. There's survey, there's a study, and the implementation portion of that. We're involved in the entire pathway of that, and there's co-shares on those costs as well. Electric vehicle charging incentives. This was new this year. The program is for the next 9 years. I guess we're at basically ending, so another 8 years or so with the program. There are incentives for residential as well as the commercial side. So on the commercial side, municipality has the opportunity to earn $20,000 for a particular site. That's for a level 3, level 2 charging station. The level 3 ones, the DC fast chargers, the ones that can charge about a half hour, they can get up to $150,000 for incentives. It's a mixture of the cost of the charger itself plus the infrastructure cost. Sometimes the infrastructure costs can get relatively high if there's trenching involved. So we want to be able to cover a portion of those costs as well. And then there's also distressed municipalities, which is designated by the state of Connecticut, where it then boosts it up in even a higher range. You can get $40,000 for level 2 and up to $250,000 for level 3. Incentives, I believe, on the residential side are $500 just for the EV charger itself, and then up to $1,000 if you do the charger. Plus, you need if there's cost for wiring for infrastructure costs on that side.
All right, I'm going to fly through just a few more slides. The Energized Connecticut Community Partnership Initiative is open to nonprofits, community-based organizations, and municipalities that are distressed for round 2 that are distressed or have environmental justice census block groups within their boundaries. So round 1 kicked off last year. We're just winding down our first year of the Community Partnership Initiative, and actually Waterbury was one of the participants. And I'm going to speak a little bit about what Waterbury did for their project. So Waterbury's Home Energy Action Campaign was funded through the Community Partnership Initiative. It was led by Clean Water Action, Neighborhood Housing Services of Waterbury with support from the city of Waterbury. And they had a goal of increasing participation in home energy solutions and home energy solutions income eligible across Waterbury. So I just spoke that round 1 is winding down, but details on round 2 are coming soon. I actually was working on the first draft of the designed application for round 2, so there'll be more information coming soon. And essentially that funding is to provide outreach campaign dollars for those entities to say, hey, we want to increase our participation in the Energized Connecticut offerings. And for round 2, that will include home energy solutions income eligible, small business energy advantage, multifamily outreach to renters and landlords, heat pumps for income eligible customers, and also we're diving a little bit into demand response as our 5th goal. So home energy solutions is that there was some active dialogue in the first presentation regarding this. This is the main entry point in which people customers across the state of Connecticut are familiar with Energized CT, with any energy efficiency programs. And this is the assessment and service that treats the home as a system to increase efficiency and optimize comfort. Regarding income eligible, which there was some great snapshots of what that program has been able to offer, and then where Operation Fuel came in as well and provided some wonderful beneficial services to those customers. It is $50 for market rate customers, but for income eligible customers, you have to qualify with that with 60% of median income, and that's updated usually about every September. There's a new I guess you would say, income brackets that come out every September of each year, and actually have those income guidelines on a flyer that I'm happy to share with everyone. You submit your income documentation, and it's so important that if you even think you might qualify for income eligible, that you go through that process, because the wealth of rebates and incentives and offerings is so great that you really need to go through that process. You can qualify for windows and insulation at a much deeper discount, weatherization, you name it, at a much deeper discount compared to a market rate customer. There are rebates and offerings for market rate customers too. 877 wise use is the number that you should know for any of the programs that we described to today. Even if you're calling in residential programs, or you just can't remember what our names are, or you don't have our contact information, we don't want you Googling and trying to figure out who you need to reach out to. You can call 877 wise use. You should get a return, either email or call, within about 2 to 3 days at the most. And they would provide information on what programs you're seeking information. And then the final content slide is regarding Small Business Energy Advantage. This is a really great program for small businesses, and how we're defining small businesses that's under 1 million kilowatt hours per year of usage across all facilities or sites in the state of Connecticut. So let's say you have 3 businesses, business locations, as long as that's under 1 million kilowatt hours, you can qualify for Small Business Energy Advantage. There's great incentives in terms of reducing the upfront financial investment that the small business owner has to make, 0% on-bill financing, ease of use with turnkey approach and utility qualified customers. You can email sbact@eversource.com for more information, or of course call Wise Use. Just a quick anecdote regarding a customer with this program. I'm working with the town of Branford by the coast here in Connecticut. They're working with a salon in right on the East Hartford line, and the salon actually qualified for our brand new micro business program. So they have very small usage in their business. They were able to upgrade their lighting, and people think that they renovated the entire salon just because of how great the lighting upgrades made the salon. I keep saying how great, and that's basically because these are really impressive approaches to energy efficiency that not just increase your savings and also just the overall, but also the overall aesthetic of your business as well. So I could probably share many anecdotes about all these programs, but I think that's about it. And now I'll pause for questions and hopefully move our slides.
I do just want to address the questions that came through in the chat. The first was, are there incentives for windows and insulation? I've only obtained LED gas-fired equipment rebates.
Is that for municipal customers?
Municipal, yep.
Yes. So the short answer is yes. Yeah, it's we've got a data sheet that needs to be filled out, and it's for specifically windows. It's we look at the way that they're facing and the type of window that they're going to install versus we don't look at existing additions for those, but we want to understand the new product that they're putting in.
Okay, perfect. And then looking for an Eversource EV charging contact for municipalities. If that's not something we know off the top of our heads.
There's a website specifically for the EV charging program. We can add that to the chat later, or I can get it to you guys and we can put that up there. It has all the questions on there. We basically use a contractor called Clear Result for initial questions, but it does go, they work directly with a specific team for the EV chargers.
Okay, great. And yeah, I'll be following up with the slides, and if presenters have extra information they want to send, everyone will be getting an email with that. And I do want to invite any other questions from either online or in the room.
If I could just pause, I just want to share the information I brought with me today.
Oh, please, yes.
So actually regarding the EV charging, I brought our EV general charging brochure, and that does have our website that will take you directly to more information. And the EV website on Eversource.com for Connecticut is actually it takes you to a mainframe, and you can select, like, I'm a residential customer, I'm a municipal customer, I have a fleet, etc. So this is a great website, great sheet, and also has the information for the website. We have a sheet on fleet assessment for EVs. We have a home energy solutions brochure with that key phone number 877 wise use in here, and other important tips about the assessment. And then also our credit programs and hardship assistance, including home energy solutions and come eligible brochure. It's in English and Spanish as well. And I'm happy to email this to any folks out there in regards to municipalities that want to have that on hand, so they could refer their residents directly to programs that can help them. And then finally, our Energized CT mobile exhibit. It's brand new for this year. We were going to launch it, but COVID got in the way with that. And it's been all over the state. I think we're at, 100+ bookings. It's an interactive museum. It engages people of all ages, and we're able to modify it depending on what program folks need, like schools, grade schools, or even high school students, as well as for community events that are attracting all ages, or even an adult program. So I just wanted to let folks know that we also have that available, and we're happy to come to your school or community event and bring the magic of energy efficiency to your community.
Yeah, handouts for those.
And then anyone online will follow up. I'm sure Eversource will provide us with some digital versions that we can send out to anyone who's online.
Can I just ask the same question? I'm always going to ask whether nonprofits are.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I meant to say that during the SBA program. The SBA program actually does
Which is
serve
the,
a small business.
a small business. Okay.
Yep, you can email SBEACT@eversource.com,
SBEA. Okay.
@eversource.com,
All right.
and they will collect some information from you. I would, send a quick introductory email, and that will go right to our energy efficiency consultants, who are able to make a quick assessment on your facility.
Okay, great.
Okay, and in the interest of time, I think if you have other questions, kindly hold them until the end, so we can get our next speaker up. Thank you so much, Eversource. So our final presenter will be joining us virtually. It is Dr. Becca Treach, who Becca, just let me know, would you like me to share the slides and move them for you, or would you like to share your own screen?
If you could pull it up for me, that would be great. I didn't have it up for me, so that'd be perfect. Also, can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
All right, lovely. And thank you all for letting me join virtually. Excited to be here.
No, it's not. Okay, go for it.
Yay, perfect. No, thank you so much. So hi, everybody. Again, thank you for letting me join you all virtually today. I'm a senior policy advisor at Connecticut's Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or DEEP. And specifically, I support DEEP's Bureau of Energy and Technology Policy, or BETP. BETP's mission is to manage energy, telecommunications, and broadband policy issues and program deployment with the goal of establishing a clean, economical, equitable, resilient, and reliable energy future for all residents. So there's a lot of goals in there. Today, I really wanted to provide an overview of how energy efficiency and demand response play a role in existing state policies, especially climate policies in Connecticut, and how folks can get involved in Connecticut policy processes that are going to continue to inform energy efficiency and demand response programs going forward. Do you mind going to the next slide? Thanks. So in terms of setting a landscape here, this slide really shows Connecticut's existing climate policies and climate commitments. As I'm sure many of you are aware, Connecticut's General Statute 22A-200A, or also called the Global Warming Solutions Act, requires economy-wide greenhouse gas emission reductions of 45% by 2030 and 80% by 2050 below 2001 levels. So that's sort of our overarching greenhouse gas reductions that we're aiming for in their time frame. In addition to that, we have Public Act 22.5 that actually just passed last year, and that, well, actually this year, we're not in 2023 yet, we're so close. But that act requires 100% zero emission electricity to be supplied to in-state electric customers by 2040. So hopefully that gets a little bit to one of the questions that was asked earlier about sort of how clean our electric grid currently is. We know that by 2040, it will actually be 100% zero emissions. So we're required to achieve that, and we're working our way towards it. And then lastly, under Governor Lamont, we have Executive Order 21-3, which directs DEEP to include in our next comprehensive energy strategy, specific strategies to provide for more affordable heating and cooling for Connecticut residents, to achieve greenhouse gas emission reductions from residential and industrial facilities, and to help improve the resilience of our energy sector. Next slide, please. So to guide the Bureau of Energy Technology Policies energy work, right? BETT is required to issue a comprehensive energy strategy, or CES, every 4 years. This strategy must examine the future energy needs of Connecticut and identify opportunities to reduce costs, ensure reliable energy availability, and mitigate public health and environmental impacts, including greenhouse gas emissions and criteria air pollutants. The strategy must also provide recommendations for legislative and administrative action to aid again in the achievement of environmental, economic, security, and reliability goals. BETP held a scoping session for the 2022 Comprehensive Energy Strategy in February of this year. And that scoping meeting indicated that the 2022 CES would consider electricity, energy used for heating and cooling, as well as fuels for transportation. So long story short, the strategy will aim to be, quote unquote, as comprehensive as possible. Next slide. DEEP also at this point has described publicly a high-level strategy for developing this next comprehensive energy strategy. And first, DEEP plans on using 5 lenses when reviewing policy ideas developed or proposed during the CES drafting process. Those lenses are climate, equity, affordability, economic development, and reliability and resilience. And as you probably are seeing at this point, these lenses really do stem from both BETP's mission and the guiding state policies that I summarized earlier. We also plan on building upon previous comprehensive energy strategies, and of course, are trying very hard to build upon major quantitative studies from around the region, because a lot of surrounding states at this point have done a lot of modeling work, really good stuff that we can build upon about future projections of technology deployment, such as heat pump deployment, levels of energy efficiency that are achievable, et cetera. So we're trying to compile all of those studies and again, build upon them rather than replicate them, but try to tweak them so that they fit within the Connecticut context. So although these slides are pretty high level, I'll acknowledge that if you do want to know more about just our overall proposed approach for the next comprehensive energy strategy, please do take a look at our webpage. You can follow along with that process there, and we have recordings of our initial sort of tech sessions or scoping sessions that provide more detail again on just this proposed approach. That said, I want to use the rest of my time today to really talk about how energy efficiency and demand response sort of fit into this larger strategic planning process, and why these specific technologies should be prioritized for Connecticut's energy future, right? And I think our previous presenters have done a really great job of describing Connecticut's current energy efficiency programs and offerings, so I'd like to start there. And what I'll be doing is sort of using the same lenses that DEEP has been using in its comprehensive energy strategy process, which again are climate equity, affordability, economic development, and reliability and resilience. So first off, energy efficiency is really important to our climate goals, right, and our climate outcomes, because at this point, the majority of New England's electricity and thermal needs are still met with fossil fuels, right? Oil, natural gas, propane. So the less of that we can use, the less greenhouse gas emissions are going to be emitted. So efficiency as a baseline is a really great outcome for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. In addition to that, I do want to also note that climate change is expected to increase the amount of storms and, sea level rise, lots of other, sort of negative outcomes for us. But one of the most important outcomes is that we expect to have a much higher increase in heat days, where we have degrees over 90 degrees on a day, where we're going to need far more cooling than I think we're all used to. And so again, energy efficiency in improving building envelopes, potentially installing heat pumps that can also provide efficient AC here, where not everybody is used to having AC, is going to be really critical as we move forward. In terms of equity, I think Gann did a great job of pointing this out as well, but unfortunately, right, a lot of those folks that are most at risk or most disadvantaged also tend to live in some of the older homes and least efficient homes within Connecticut. So it's really important for us to be delivering energy efficiency to them as quickly and efficiently as possible. Again, because energy burdens are extremely high within New England in general. And anything we can be doing to reduce that burden so that money can be spent on other things such as food and medicine and other critical needs is really important to everybody. So that's on the equity side. Building on the affordability piece, it's important to note that energy efficiency is often one of the lowest cost resources we have available to us. Again, for every kilowatt hour we don't have to produce, we're saving a lot of money. We also will note that energy efficiency tends to be lower in cost than buying more electricity. So as long as energy efficiency on average is really costing us less than buying more, we should probably be prioritizing energy efficiency. In addition to that, I'll note that our electric grid in particular is built to serve peak demand, and peak demand only happens for a short window of time in the summer usually. And it's when everybody sort of turns on their ACs and their fans and everything else on a really hot day. And we're all drawing as much electricity as we can to try to stay cool. And our whole system is sized to meet that one, peak hour of the year. And so if we can lower that peak hour, again, by potentially using heat pumps instead of traditional AC units, by improving the thermal envelopes of buildings, we'll actually be able to size our system more effectively and not oversize it for the majority of the other hours of the year. So reducing peak is something we always want to continue to pursue as well. And then lastly, on this slide about affordability, I think we've all experienced it right now. There's a ton of price volatility related to fossil fuels. There are a lot of external factors that of course influence those prices, including wars in other countries. And so we have to recognize that the more we can sort of shelter ourselves from dependence on these, again, volatile prices, the better our pocketbooks will be. All right, so moving on, in terms of economic development, this is also, I think, an important point to drive home. Right now, Connecticut has over 40,000 clean energy jobs, but the largest portion of those jobs are in energy efficiency, over 30,000 of them. And so this is a really large part of our current clean energy economy. We expect it to continue to grow, which is a large opportunity for everybody looking to get into this field. And also I need to recognize that even with all of this work that is happening, we've unfortunately seen that greenhouse gas emissions from buildings in Connecticut have actually been increasing over recent years, not decreasing, even with all of these energy efficiency efforts and programs. And so we know we're going to need more. So again, it's a large economic development opportunity here that we're very hopeful we can continue to build upon. And then moving on to reliability and resilience. Again, I've mentioned this, but our systems are really built to serve peak. So if we can lower our peak demand on our system, that also gives us a little bit of buffer in case there are suddenly extreme heat swings or temperature swings. And then in addition to that, certain energy efficiency measures such as insulation can really help homes to ride out power outages for short periods of time and help folks to remain comfortable for short periods of time without being able to run your furnace or your air conditioner. And so that's also really critical to allow us to be more resilient. As we know, storm frequencies are actually sadly going to be increasing with climate change. So that's a lot of reasons why energy efficiency is extremely important to our policy goals at this point. But the other effort that I think was intermingled with the programs that were described by earlier presenters is demand response. And I just want to make sure that we're all recognizing the difference here. So energy efficiency is when you take a standard energy use for a building and you actually lower it so that you just don't need as much to get the same outcome. Demand response, on the other hand, is when you're shifting the timing of when energy is used. So instead of lowering the total amount of energy you need, you're simply using it at different times during the day. And again, that can help a lot with some of the peak issues that I've been talking about and the sizing of the system. So running through again, the benefits for demand response on the climate side, as we grow our renewable generation, which is inevitably a variable source of electricity, right? Because the wind doesn't always blow, sun doesn't always shine, right? It's a standard line at this point, but it's very true. And so if we're able to have more flexibility on our demand side for electricity, we may be able to actually better match demand and supply from variable sources and increase the use of renewable energy. So this is important for us over the long term, again, trying to provide flexibility on both sides of the grid. Historically, we haven't had any control over the demand side, and we've just been ramping up and ramping down generators in real time to meet demand. And hopefully going forward, as we get better and better technologies here and everything can communicate with each other, we'll be able to sort of play with both sides of the equation to make sure that everything is matching appropriately. So that's the climate side. Moving on to equity. Demand response, again, sort of shifting time of use, also allows for somebody to have potentially more control over their energy bills. Right now, residential folks in Connecticut don't have time of use rates, but other states do, and other jurisdictions do across the world, where you will actually pay more for electricity during certain times of the day than during other times of the day. And again, normally that electricity is more expensive when you're closer to those peak hours of the day when everybody else is demanding it. And that's trying to provide a price signal to get people to, again, shift when they use electricity. If that is in place, that kind of pricing structure, then having demand response technologies such as smart light bulbs that folks brought up, or energy management systems or building automation systems for commercial buildings, or even being able to put a timer on your electric vehicle charger so that charges at different times. When you have those capabilities, it makes it a lot easier for you to then time your energy demands with the lowest prices during the day. So again, that's sort of an equity issue of making sure that everybody has access to these kind of smart technologies to, again, be able to best control their energy bills. Related to that, on affordability, as I mentioned before, again, everything is built to meet peak demand. And so if we're able to move that peak or lower that peak by not using less electricity, but instead shifting when people are demanding electricity, we'll actually be able to build out less, especially with electrification going forward. I think we've all noticed the fact that, as people electrify their transportation with EVs, or they put in more heat pumps, we will need a larger energy grid, electric grid, to supply all of that electricity for all of those needs. But we actually might be able to build out less than we otherwise would have to if we, again, are smart about when people are sort of demanding that electricity power. If we can spread that out and not have everybody demand it all at the same time, at the same day, we would be able to, again, sort of right size the system more appropriately. Which has potential cost savings for everybody. Moving on to economic development, I think it's important to recognize that, again, on the demand response side of things, there's just a variety of jobs out there that are related to this. It's not just installing the smart equipment, as I've mentioned, like the EV chargers or the building automation systems. It's not just installing them, it's also all of the communication software and coding that goes behind the scenes to make sure that everything is communicating appropriately, and ideally is even potentially receiving signals from the utility or other places to, again, determine when is most effective to be utilizing electricity and when is it most costly, either to society or on a pricing signal basis to be using electricity. So lots of opportunity there. And then lastly, on reliability and resilience for demand response, it's also important to realize that a lot of folks, I think, are interested these days in having sort of backup generation of some kind for their homes, and maybe even being able to island themselves in case the power goes out. If you're looking at any of some of the electric trucks that are coming out, I know Ford is proposing that they can backfeed homes. If you lose power from your truck, you might be able to actually run some critical systems in your house off your truck's battery. In doing that, ideally, you'd actually have some smart controls in there that would allow you to choose what your critical systems are. So you don't just only run everything in your house for 30 minutes rather than being able to run your refrigerator for many hours. But also, again, maybe instead of having your truck backfeed your house, maybe you have solar panels on your roof. And that means that maybe you'd actually be able to run your dishwasher and multiple other things in the peak of the day when the sun is shining, but you'd then want to scale back and not use as many technologies in the evening if you didn't have readily available electricity at that time. So there's all these smart technologies that are related to demand response can also enable some of this more effective islanding or sort of self-feeding outside of being connected to the electric system in case that goes down. In addition to that, as I mentioned, it can hopefully speed our transition to being more dependent on local renewable electricity rather than foreign non-domestic sources of fossil fuels, which again is really critical to our reliability and our safety. So that was hopefully a good overview of just why both energy efficiency and demand response are so critical to meeting our policy objectives here. But I wanted to also talk a little bit about how you could engage with, informing these programs and all of these offerings going forward. I think there are sort of two critical paths. One is participating in Connecticut's Energy Efficiency Board, and the other is participating in our ongoing comprehensive energy strategy development process. So if you go to the next slide, this is important to probably initially just go to their website, but the Connecticut's Energy Efficiency Board, evaluates and advises on all of the energy efficiency programs and demand response programs in the state, all the Energized CT programs that you heard about, and they meet monthly, right? And they always have opportunities for public comment. And so if you have ideas about how these programs can be made better, how the funding should be deployed in any way, I encourage you to get involved and reach out and participate in this state level board. DEEP does sit on the board, remember, and so you would also be getting your ideas to us as well. And I encourage you to participate as much as you would like to. It's a great way to, again, sort of influence priorities and where funding is spent. And again, if you go through a program and you have ideas for how it could be better, that feedback is always much appreciated. And so the best way to find their next meeting is, of course, going to their webpage. The other thing I'll flag is, as I said, the comprehensive energy strategy process is sort of ongoing. This slide gives you a good sense of sort of the estimated development timeline. In total, we're planning to hold a total of 8 technical sessions on specific energy topics. The second to last technical session is actually happening today. I will jump back to it after talking with you all. But our last technical session will be next week on Thursday. So if you're interested in joining that, please do. Next week's session will be on market-based decarbonization programs and low carbon incentives. That said, all of these technical sessions have been, as their name indicates, highly technical and have been sort of full day virtual sessions. In 2023, we actually plan on holding far more general listening sessions that are open to everybody. The technical sessions are also open, but again, if you don't have the time or bandwidth to engage in them, we fully understand, and we want to have plenty of other opportunities in early 2023 for you to provide your thoughts and feedback. And in the meantime, you can always submit written comments to us at any time as well. If you go to our comprehensive energy strategies webpage, which is shown on this, this slide, you can find our email address to submit written comments at any point. In addition to that, I'll just flag in terms of the timing, we do expect that before the end of January, we plan to issue 3 white papers on some of the topics we've had technical sessions on. Those white papers will be drafts, so there will also be lots of opportunity for more feedback and improving the thoughts and ideas in those white papers. But those white papers will be focused on building thermal decarbonization, hydrogen, and active demand response. And again, they're going to try to summarize what we've discovered through our research of other studies that have happened in surrounding states, as well as all the feedback we've received through our technical sessions. And then from that point, those white papers, we'll use those to, again, continue conversations with the public about what all of your thoughts and priorities are about Connecticut's energy future. And then from there, we will be actually drafting the full comprehensive energy strategy in the first 2 quarters of 2023. So I encourage you all, please engage with this process. If you have thoughts and opinions about it, we would love to hear from you. Very last thing I wanted to toss out here was a quick update on a program that BETP actually is starting up and running. So the Weatherization Barrier Remediation Program, or also referred to as the Residential Energy Preparation Services, or REPS program that Gannon alluded to. This program is really focused on trying to mitigate some of the barriers to energy efficiency, especially weatherization. So as you can imagine, things shown on this slide, such as asbestos or mold or knob and tube wiring, right? There's a variety of things out there that can sort of prevent you from being able to install insulation or do air sealing, which is necessary to then be able to potentially convert to heat pumps or other technologies. And so we recognize that these barriers keep coming up. And so we've dedicated a bit of funding at this point to help remediate these. And so DEEP is in the final stages of working with our contractor ICAST. We're also working with 2 WAP program administrators, the utilities, and of course the Department of Social Services to solidify the program process, metrics, and all the sort of details about the program. We're in the middle of a pilot phase that is currently working with several eligible customers with the intent of ramping up the program in the new year. I think we're aiming at this point for January, sort of mid to late January of 2023. But again, we're in the pilot phase right now, so that timeline might change a little bit. Moving to the next slide, just so folks know how to enroll in this, in case you think that there are barriers in your home. To enroll, you do have to first go through either WAP or the HES program. And so you first need to reach out and sort of get an audit done of your home. That audit would then say, yes, we do want to do insulation or some kind of weatherization in your home, but you have X, Y, and Z barriers to doing so. Then that auditor would then refer you to this weatherization barrier remediation program, or REPS program, and we would then, work with you. Primarily, ICAST, the contractor, would work with you, to get you the incentives you needed to be able to cover those costs, get those barriers remediated, and be able to move forward with weatherization. So I just wanted to toss that out there because that's a program we have pretty direct control over and are moving forward, and hopefully it will be valuable to everybody. That said, I'm happy to take questions, and of course, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Here's my email. Always happy to engage with folks.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. We welcome questions from anyone online or in the room.
My question is, I didn't realize there was a difference in charge between day and night.
In charge?
Electric
Well,
rate.
so what she was saying is that in certain states. there are. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. So Connecticut doesn't have time of use rates at all right now for residential customers, but in other places there are. And that's a way, again, of encouraging folks to use electricity during different times of the day when it actually is more affordable or more readily available.
How do we get the state to do that? What incentive do we, I know the incentive, how do we encourage them to do that?
Yeah, actually, again, I would encourage folks that are interested in that to, voice those thoughts through the comprehensive energy strategy process. It's as easy as writing an email in, or showing up and making a public comment during one of the meetings that we'll have and listening sessions. And that way it gets on the record that there are folks that are interested in moving that forward.
Can we get her information?
All this information is going to be sent to everyone's email. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. And So we are running a little bit behind, but I just wanted to invite everyone to, even if you don't have specific questions, to sort of have a discussion, give the public the opportunity to either ask questions you didn't have a chance to ask or throw out your thoughts. Certainly happy to hear from anyone online or in person. Nothing? I guess our presentations were so thorough, we don't have any questions left. CJ, are you raising your hand in the back? I can't even see it back there.
It's slightly overlaps between energy conservation and energy production. I was wondering if anybody had any ideas about how much energy in terms of heating can be saved if you were to cover, say, a flat roof of a large building with solar panels. You're obviously generating electricity, but my thought is that you're also preventing that heating up of the rooftop by blocking the sunlight from hitting a building. That's way out of the financials of today's discussion, but I was curious if anybody had considered that as a factor.
So I have to admit, off the top of my head, I do not know, just the value there. What I have heard though is in much hotter climates, so not necessarily in Connecticut, there have been efforts to, paint roofs white because reflecting solar gain that way is actually highly effective in reducing the temperature of homes during, the summer. So similar properties might be happening with solar panels, but I have not heard of that as a concrete, action to be taken at this point.
And I would add to that, also, the solar industry is always coming up with new ways to make it more seamless rather than having the giant panels on the roof. There's actually some development into making roof shingles solar. So it's seamless with your roof. In addition to, of course, painting your white roofs, and especially for commercial and industrial buildings, that's really where you see a lot of savings, just because they take up so much space.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Always want to put in. I've been working on this with landlords and stuff for a year or more and doing this. What I found is, these sessions are wonderful, but what's happening is there are so many different organizations, state organizations, whether it's DEEP or Connecticut Energy or the other ones that we've directed here. And it gets really complicated in terms of, I think, a small organization, small business or a homeowner to know, where do I go? How do I really get through this? Because it's segregated right now, some of it's Eversource, some of the state. Is there any way to simplify the system so that the average person can get a simpler thing of, if I want to make changes, where do I go first?
Well, I think Devin had this awesome suggestion of just the wise use number, right? That's where you start, right?
For everything?
Yeah.
And that would be the best place to go?
Absolutely, because even if sometimes someone will send in either a call or email or contact us site on Energized CT, or somebody calls into wise use, either way, and they may submit an inquiry, and they think that they're asking for one thing, but it actually means that they're asking for something else, and that email or a phone call message will get to the right person.
Okay.
It's the best one-stop. It's almost like a 411, but for energy services. I'm dating myself with that reference.
Okay.
But your point is well taken. It's complicated. There's a lot of stuff.
And that was the main reasoning behind 877 wise use. It's not just for residential energy efficiency, it's for everything.
Now, who makes presentations? You folks do that, presentations
For communities.
to I have my neighborhood association where I live up in Top Lot. And most of them are elderly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think something like this would be advantageous to them as
Yeah.
far as cost.
Absolutely. I am providing a presentation just about one or more a week to, I've been all over the state, so.
But this other thing with solar, I think I'm over the peak now. I used to have 3 or 4 calls a day. It's confusing to me. I hear some people don't pay any electric bills, but they have to pay the solar company $150 for the solar panels. What do they say?
Well,
Well, eventually, when they pay off the system, so they're paying the solar company for the system because they had no upfront costs. So eventually, when they pay off that solar system, they'll have no cost. You have to pay off that initial cost for the
It'll
installation.
take how long?
Yeah, it depends. It's a wide range of how much, solar capability you have for your house versus how much the initial cost. I don't know the cost of what these solar installations
The
are.
big
so-
thing is with me, I have trees around my house, so it's kind of difficult. And plus, I can't even fathom the idea of anybody going on my roof because they just had a new roof replaced. And who guarantees that with solar?
So
That's
what-
the first thing I
something-
worry about is leaks.
Sure, something else I want to bring up is that I feel like we had a very big focus throughout these presentations on affordability and money. And that's absolutely part of the conversation. But this is our Environmental Sustainability Forum, right? And someone might prefer to be paying off a solar panel than paying into an electrical grid where it's mostly fossil
So I
fuel.
got that because I know somebody that did that.
Sure,
They say they're not paying the electric company anywhere, but they're paying the $150 to the solar company.
sure.
6 of one, half a dozen of another,
Well, with this, I mean, we do that, and I can tell you that the two together are a lot less than if I had to pay everything just to the electric company.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big advantage.
And CJ, I saw you in the back there.
Yeah, I was curious, does Energized CT still have its energy education center, which I saw as a very, you're shaking your head, no, I'm so sorry, because it was a great place for grown-ups and for kids to go and learn about how you can save energy. There were even little games you could play that would say, here's how much energy an old refrigerator uses, and here's how much energy a new refrigerator uses, and you could realize how you could change the energy budget of your house, but not by using a calculator, but by playing a game. And I'm sorry that that's closed down.
absolutely. So the center is closed. I believe it was in North Haven.
Yeah,
However, our Energy in Action mobile exhibit,
yes, good.
it does include interactive activities. I can't speak to exactly that one, if
Sure.
that one's included, but at least with it being mobile, it can go to you, so it can go directly to the community. And it's, I've been to it 2 or 3 times at various community events, and we're able to modify it to whatever audience that the exhibit is catering to. Whether it's school children, high schoolers, college, community of all ages. And that will go to your event. An example would be like at a library. We've actually done some programs where the Energy in Action exhibit is there on a weekday from like 4 to 6. And then after that, we have presentations in the library for the community to attend and to learn more information about energy efficiency and any other energy topics that they would like to include.
Thank you.
So, oh, sorry.
If I can, I was just also, if you're familiar with the Green Bank, they are based in Hartford, we're actually on the same campus, but they're looking towards creating a sort of energy hub campus at our location. It's Charter Oak Avenue in Hartford. So that, I think that's something that you could look for in the next couple of years of just kind of developing that one-stop shop for people, and certainly policy and a lot of these things we've talked about here, but also a little bit more interactive and educational for the public. So that might be a group to connect with as well, Connecticut Green Bank.
Thank you.
So yeah, we're right at our 1:30 mark. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming in person and online. Thank you again to our wonderful speakers. We really appreciate your time, and everyone go have an energy efficient winter. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab one of those.